You know, one of the interesting questions is always around budgeting projects. I think most people really want to know how projects are budgeted, how we arrive at a number. And one of the challenging parts of being in video production, I think several different creative services, is there isn't a one size fits all. Now, we have pre-built packages on our website that have price points for them, but so often I find most of our services have some level of customization. And I think that's because we have to ask so many questions to figure out what's the real solution here. The way I think about providing a service is really thinking about who's the audience, what's the problem that we're trying to solve, and then how do we nail that messaging for that video. And so many pieces will come into play with figuring out a budget. We started out in music videos, and I always say this, I guess looking back on it, I was always so disappointed in the fact that we didn't have bigger budgets to work with. It was always so difficult to solve these problems. But now I really look at it as our unfair advantage. The way we look at finding solutions is so much different than just finding the right budget to make a project awesome. It's great when you have a lot of money, but you don't always have that luxury. You don't always have that capability. And it's really allowed us to kind of look at the way we build our teams, the way we look at creativity, and it's made us become really resourceful. Oftentimes we're working with someone who just doesn't have the budget that we'd like. Where it would be wonderful to have a $25,000 budget, sometimes we only have a 10. And I could say, hey, sorry, we can't work with you. Or we can start to reverse engineer that $10,000 budget to make something that's still going to be awesome, something that we're going to be proud of, that we're going to endorse, something that's not going to hurt our reputation, but also something that's going to be amazing for them. So truth be told, as the producer, as the business owner, I'm a problem solver. I went to school for engineering, and so often the way I look at budgeting is very much from an engineering mindset. I'm really trying to think about what's the right team that's going to be able to execute this and to make sure we're still building a good business, because there's so many different pieces to this. Depending on what project we're looking at, what variables are coming into play. People are one piece of it. The locations to be able to tell the story, the right characters that we need to interview or to include in the creative treatment to make this possible, the talent we have to source in, if we have set design and art department that goes into this, depending on what logistical things from data, from cameras, all these different pieces come into play in telling the right story the right way. And I think there's the filmmaking side of things where we want everything to be perfect. We want everything to be awesome. But there's also the side of this where it's like, what do we actually need? So what are the wants and what are the needs of the project? The needs are kind of the bare minimum. The wants are the things that would be amazing to have. And oftentimes a budget will inform what we're able to do. Now, something that I'm often asking a lot of our clients when it comes to budget is, how hard are we swinging on this project? Let's just say hypothetically, we're looking at a $10,000 project. Is this something that you're going to do a $10,000 project and you really need this thing to, be the lifeboat for the next couple of years? Or is this something you're going to be able to do multiple times a year, or maybe break up into multiple different initiatives? Let's look at a brand film as an example. We do brand films anywhere from the 7K range to the 50K range. That's where most of these land. Now, just because you do it once doesn't mean you're done. You can tell a brand story that is about your mission and culture. You can also tell a hero story of someone that you've impacted in your brand, and this is a brand story film. It might be something that we really want to do more as a day in the life side of things. That budget is going to dictate how many days can we spend on this. Do we have to pull our resources together for one day? Do we have multiple days that we have to cover this? Are there events and different things that have to be covered? Logistics, the people, the characters, the story that we're trying to tell. So if we come back to a $10,000 initiative of let's talk about the mission and culture, then let's do a day in the life of, then let's do something that's more peeled back and sharing more of the employee impact. There are so many different initiatives. So can we afford to do this more than once? Is it something that we can do only once a year? Would it be smarter to kind of spread this up to a brand film, some smaller films, some more process-based sort of things? And really thinking about not the budget as a cost, but an investment. What do we really want out of our business? What can filmmaking, what can storytelling do for our business? Highlighting a simple process can save a ton of time. It can remove a lot of resistance. It can help humanize your brand. It can help create a more aspirational story for your brand. So I really think, when we look at the budget question, what are you really spending that money on? That's what you want to know. Process is a part of our budget. The way that we walk people through our process makes it super concrete every single time. From point A to point Z, we're going to walk people through the same process, depending on what film type, depending on who the characters are. A big part of the budgeting process is us walking through, asking the right questions, getting a good, clear understanding of the logistics, of the people, of the experience and the expectations, where you're going to use this film, who the audience is, what the key takeaways are, what some of the secondary takeaways are, and mapping out a project that is going to be as useful as possible. We could look at one deliverable, but we could also spend our time and spend our budget on making multiple deliverables out of that time that we have. Think about who you're interviewing. How many different pieces of content can we pull from them? Yes, we want to get great sound bites and great things to build out, say, a 3-minute edit with someone. But what if there's some other little small things that we could add that could be micro content pulled out of this campaign? Oftentimes, we'll create 2 scopes of work. We'll have the main deliverable that we're focused on. Let's just use the branding film as an example. We have a $10K budget for that. But say we had an extra $4K to pull editing assets out of that. Let's get some extra questions. Let's ask them, and let's pull those things into a separate scope of work, say for $4,000, and build that up over 4 months of content. We can have our priority content, and then we can do a slow drip of other content and make that budget go a little bit further. When we look at budgets, I think it's really thinking about, what are we really trying to create? What impact do we want out of this? And how can we make the biggest runway out of this content? I love when we look at teams, when we look at tools, when we look at clients, when we look at this as a real collaborative process, and we're not scared to share that budget, but we're really thinking about budget as this is the money we have set aside to solve this problem. And when you work with a partner that understands that problem and can help work through that problem with you, you're going to get the most bang for your budget. I mean, at the end of the day, myself and everyone included in the creative service side of things wants to do a good job. I mean, gosh, I love the work that I do, and I have yet to meet a creative that doesn't love the work that they do. I think that goes for anyone who's running a business. I'm proud of the work that I do. So let's not be so defensive on the budget question, and let's ask better questions. Let's be more open about these things, and let's try to find partners that really want to solve these problems for us, rather than worrying about how can we get the best deal? How can we cut the cost down as low as possible? Let's really look at, what do we really want this project to do? And can this person do that for me? I think that's going to make us a lot happier, myself included, as well as the clients that we serve, because we can be focused on the right things, which is finding a solution, managing that budget, and making the things happen that we want to happen in that video project.